Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. So today we're going to be analyzing the West Virginia Senate election results from 2018. So the results are currently on your screen. Right now we're looking at Joe Manchin winning with 49.5% of the vote compared to Patrick Morrisey, the current Attorney General from the state of West Virginia, at 46.3%. So right now, straight off the bat, this is a huge increase for the GOP compared to where their margin was back in 2012. The last time Joe Manchin was reelected for his senatorial bid in the state of West Virginia. Joe Manchin won with 60.6% of the vote back in 2012. In his most recent election, 2018, he won with 49.5% of the vote, not even a majority. So if you look at the Libertarian going down to Rusty Holland, he got 4.2% of the vote. That could be counted as a spoiler. Keep in mind, most Libertarians that without a Libertarian candidate would vote for the Republican Party just based off overall issues. I get you can maybe argue that they would go to the Democrats and Republicans, but typically they lean towards the GOP, which possibly could have pushed Patrick Morrisey up over that 49.5% mark to maybe 49.6%. So Joe Manchin won by a pretty good amount for a Democrat in a very conservative state. But it comes down to a couple of things. Why did this Democrat get reelected out of all the others that lost? What factors played into this? The president is highly approved here. Why did it go to the Democratic Party? Again, looking at party politics, party identity from previous elections, there is no reason why the GOP should lose here at all. The same argument was made in my most recent video about Arizona, but that you can push and stretch a little bit. West Virginia, there's absolutely no exception for a GOP loss in this state. Looking at the 3 House races that are all with the GOP, looking at the other Senate seat that is heavily in favor of the GOP, the governorship held by the GOP, going to Trump by 42% in 2016. Again, no clear reason as to why West Virginia should all of a sudden turn in favor of the Democratic Party. But if you go back 6 years, it didn't necessarily all of a sudden turn in favor of the Democrats. If I looked at a number of other predictions from a couple of other election YouTubers, and they put West Virginia in the GOP column. Now, these weren't necessarily the most accurate predictions. They also had states like New York solidly Republican, so I definitely saw the clear bias from in favor of the Republicans in these predictions, but some of them, they tried to make reasoning as to why West Virginia went to the GOP, and it was simple as West Virginia is a heavily Republican state. But looking at party affiliation, there are more registered Democrats in the state of West Virginia as a whole, rather than Republicans, which definitely is something that you really need to look at in the state itself. Why are these Democrats overwhelmingly voting for Donald Trump? But disregarding that, the argument was just made the fact that West Virginia was a Republican state. I get that argument, but Joe Manchin is also pretty popular. Now, when I say that, looking at his approval rating, it's at 45%, sorry. Shelly Capito, she is at 46%. Okay, so looking at that, not that much of a difference. The only difference is party affiliation. Now, Joe Manchin's approval rating probably has gone up recently for something that is very notable. If you don't know what it is, you probably haven't been keeping up with the major mainstream media in terms of the way that they portray these Democrats, but Joe Manchin is the only Democrat to vote in favor of Brett Kavanaugh. He was one of those voters that pushed him over, and with or without him, it probably would have gone anyway, if we're being completely honest. Joe Manchin probably would have, if he voted against it, tied it up maybe, okay? Putting him at a position where he voted in favor of Brett Kavanaugh when he did not necessarily need to, that's something that definitely resonated with the West Virginia voters. There was a poll that came out that said Joe Manchin would win by 2% if he did not vote in favor of Brett Kavanaugh, and by 18% if he did. Now, obviously, this isn't some 18-point margin, but if he didn't, that would have hurt him very badly. Patrick Morrisey likely would have won here, because if he was winning by 18% and only by 2% in that poll, and based off those polling results, he probably could have been underwater by 10%. Now, I'm not saying that's what would have happened, but it is a possibility. This, again, is a Republican state. I'm not saying it isn't, just because Joe Manchin won here once. But keep in mind, these Republican voters typically approve of him. He has around the same approval rating as a Republican senator in this state itself. So it's not like it's completely just party-based in terms of approval in the state of West Virginia. Joe Manchin is doing a lot for the people of West Virginia based off what their views are. Voting for Brett Kavanaugh, again, did not have to do that. No Democrat did. He is the only Democrat, not even out of all the ones running for re-election, not a single other one. Not Heidi Heitkamp, not Joe Donnelly, not Doug Jones from Alabama, not Claire McCaskill, not John Tester, who recently just won in the state of Montana. So all of these Democrats went against Donald Trump's interest in Donald Trump states, and it came to bite them in the back, disregarding the state of Montana. Joe Manchin was smart. He voted in favor of Brett Kavanaugh, and whether he truly believed that he should have or should not have, he won regardless. And he did vote in favor of Brett Kavanaugh, and it likely was to save his own skin, if we're being completely honest. A number of these Democratic incumbents would have had much better re-election bids if they had just voted in favor of Brett Kavanaugh. I understand the argument, sticking to your morals, but when it comes down to this re-election bid and keeping the party intact, that was something that they really flopped on, because Brett Kavanaugh was going to go through anyway. There was a discussion, and I get it. It came down to the Senate floor to actually figure out whether or not these senators were going to vote in favor of him. But when it came down to this vote, these Democrats could have voted in favor of Kavanaugh, like Joe Manchin did. And Joe Manchin was the only Democrat to do so. But again, he didn't necessarily perform like he did in his previous election. Looking back at 2012, look at that margin, okay? Look at the county results. Only 3 Republican counties. Okay, now there are a lot more than 3 Republican counties. Looking at the major areas, though, Joe Manchin did pretty well compared to other Democrats in this state. Hillary Clinton won 0 counties. Okay, at least a Republican won 3 counties against Joe Manchin. Hillary Clinton won 0. Not even in big population centers like Charleston, where you could say the urban areas, quote-unquote urban areas, not really urban in West Virginia, but still urban compared to the rest of them. Yes, Hillary Clinton should have performed well there. She didn't. She got 26% of the vote, meaning if you lined up everyone in West Virginia voters, 1 out of 4 of them voted for Hillary Clinton. That's not a lot. You look at the state of West Virginia now, it's about 50-50. 49.5% for Joe Manchin, 46.3% for Patrick Morrisey. So what happened? Well, his approval rating isn't too high. Donald Trump's approval rating is through the roof. It is phenomenal in the state of West Virginia. In fact, it's the highest out of any state in the country. So West Virginia, what went wrong for the GOP? Patrick Morrisey might not have been the best Trump-style candidate that they could have nominated. It probably was not any of the other ones either. None of them ones that they ran. But they could have ran a better candidate, someone that they could have recruited in, like Mitt Romney did in Utah. Even though that wasn't a contested race, he would have been a pretty good candidate in any of the races. Patrick Morrisey, not so much. Joe Manchin did a phenomenal job at retaining his voting base. Now, he lost 11% of voters here, okay? Joe Manchin went from 60.6% to 49.5%. But holding on to that over a 6-year period is something you have to applaud him for. He is a Democrat in a state that Trump won by 42 percentage points. 42! This is not some narrow election like Arizona was for Trump in 2016 that narrowly went for the Democrat. He was able to bring Hillary Clinton's 26% all the way up to 49% of the vote. 50% if you are rounding. So again, Hillary Clinton, yes, she was able to get 1 in 4 voters. Joe Manchin was able to get 1 in 2 voters. So looking at the U.S. Senate results, yes, it was a down, decrease from 2012, but he did a phenomenal job, especially looking at the holistic view in terms of the Senate. Indiana went. Montana remained narrowly. North Dakota went overwhelmingly. Missouri went. Okay, Florida is probably going to go. West Virginia should have gone too, but it didn't. Joe Manchin was able to hold on to the state the same way Jon Tester was able to hold on to Montana, but Joe Manchin actually voted in favor of Brett Kavanaugh, which likely was that make-or-break deal for the voters in this state. Again, looking at every single thing based on party identity, West Virginia should be a GOP state, but it isn't. And looking at the results from 2016 to 2018, a lot more blue on that map. Joe Manchin did a phenomenal job at retaining these voters. Looking again, back to the map, I'm not saying West Virginia is the only state to retain in the Democratic column out of these contested races. Montana was another one. But Indiana went by 5%. Missouri went by 6%. North Dakota went by 10%. Florida is possibly going to go by 0.2%. Those are still 4 pickups. West Virginia did not go with the rest of the bunch, which means the next time the GOP is going to have to focus on candidates here is going to be in the year 2024. Keep that in mind. 6 years from that election is when actually the Democratic Party is going to be put up for another chance, because there is no other Democratic incumbent in any of the statewide elected offices in terms of what affects the laws there and the overall Senate makeup or House makeup, except for Joe Manchin. Not a single congressional representative, not the governor, and Joe Manchin is the only senator, and Democrats don't win here in presidential elections. So really, the next time Democrats really need to worry is 2024. Keep that in mind. The GOP really could have taken this one now and held on to it for 30 more years. Okay, that's exactly what they're doing in states like Missouri and states like Indiana and states like North Dakota with an incumbent representative, someone who knows how to legislate. Missouri with Josh Hawley, someone who's been near the governor. Indiana with Mike Braun, who isn't necessarily prepared for politics but has had been in elected office before. These Republicans know how to play the game, and they likely will. But looking at the state of West Virginia itself, Joe Manchin, the GOP really could have pounced on this. They could have taken this. This is one of the few states that Trump really thought he was going to get for the GOP because he won here by such a large margin. Again, it just didn't happen. So Joe Manchin, huge applause to him for being able to retain the Senate seat. They're not going to have to worry about it for a long time, so this really has no real implications on the upcoming election or the one after that. So next time we're going to have to worry about this is when Trump is going to be ineligible for a second term, and that's not for a very long time. So that wraps up today's video. Thank you guys for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below, and I will see you all tomorrow.